Madness Combat is a Newgrounds classic. Created by Crinkles, is probably one of the most popular and loved pieces of media ever posted on the website. And I can see why. I mean, there's literally a day on Newgrounds named after the whole franchise, and with the enormous amount of fan support, it is hard to have at least not heard about it. But for the small number of people who haven't seen the series, allow me to introduce you to Madness Combat. Episode 1, Madness Combat. So, how does the series start, you may be asking? Well, in the most appropriate way possible, of course, with some music. Over by a tree, we meet our protagonist, Hank J. Wimbledon. Yes, that is his name. And annoyed by the music, he goes to turn it down, and gets punched. Yeah, for Hank, you're pretty much asking for a fight at that point. And it's getting progressively worse. More people coming out of who knows where and dying as Hank pleases. And at the end of the episode, we actually find out that he enjoyed killing these people. All 30 of them. Are we sure this guy's the protagonist? Wait a second, is that Jesus? Yeah, Jesus is a character, and he can do some questionable things. He can turn dead people into zombies and block bullets with his powers? Not to mention he has straight up lightning bolts that he can shoot out of his hands. You know what? I'm starting to think this isn't a very accurate representation. Hank kills him despite the odds, and then dances to the music he wanted to turn off. Bear with me though, this series isn't going to be all fun and games. In fact, the next episode is coming right up. Episode 2, Redeemer. Episode 2 starts out with Hank killing and dumping a body into a sewer. That's a good start. This is because he's breaking into a building that we only know to be hiding the sheriff. Another character in this series that seems to be on Hank's kill list. Hank finds him with his sheriff tracker, which couldn't be more subtle, and then breaks into the building. Which I wish he never did, because now we have to suffer through the constant looping track of country music playing in the background. I had to suffer through it, so now you have to too. Anyways, Hank eventually encounters another prominent character in the series and a fan favorite, Tricky. Oh, he died. Yeah, in this episode, he's not really important, just an assassin hired by the sheriff to kill Hank, who obviously didn't do a good job. A character that is important in this episode, though, is Jesus. Yeah, he's back. I guess he didn't die back in the first episode. He follows Hank, and they have a quick battle before Jesus just dips after summoning a few zombies. Hank kills them with ease, further increasing his body count, and eventually makes it to the last room with the sheriff, and right as he goes in for the kill, he gets shot by Jesus, who was still following him. Well, that's it. Hank's dead. Series done. Only kidding. We have about, how much more episodes? 12? Let's move on. Episode 3, Avenger. Before I continue, you're probably wondering how Hank is alive. He got shot, right? Well, in the episode, it said he was given a second chance. So I'm guessing a miracle? Although that makes no sense because Jesus literally killed him and he's one of the people that grant... You know what? It doesn't matter. The episode begins with Hank, who has patched himself up with some bandages, bursting through one of the vents in another building. And you can tell he's not happy. And like in the last episode, he's still at it for the sheriff. Continuing through the building, we eventually find out that the sheriff and Jesus are watching Hank through the cameras. So they boot the improbability drive, knowing he's getting too close. And we see Tricky. And in this episode, he has about an extra 1 minute of screen time. Yeah, he died by a street sign almost immediately. But if you were paying attention, you would know that Jesus has something under his sleeve. His powers. So he brings Tricky back from the dead with his new weapon of choice being the street sign he was cured with. At least now he can finally make an impact on the series instead of, dying.
Meanwhile,
Hank is, killing more people, getting closer to the sheriff. But before he reaches him, he has an encounter with the new and improved Tricky. And Hank's having a little bit of a struggle this time, especially with the new street sign Tricky is using. Hank does manage to kill him though, so it's up to Jesus. Because I guess the sheriff's just a big puss. Jesus kicks Hank hard enough to end up in the next room with the sheriff. And Hank, ignoring Jesus, I'm guessing blinded by rage, rushes forward to get the sheriff, who can be seen running away. And just like last time, he goes in for the kill, and gets stabbed by Jesus. Looks like it's game over, guys. But, by surprise, double barrels Jesus and the sheriff in the face. So, one by one, they all fall to the ground, Hank finally fulfilling his duty. Hey, by the way, if you were expecting to see the sheriff again in, the next episodes, don't get your hopes high, because he actually dies in this episode, which is a first for a character that, stays dead. Which is good, because he was a big push. Episode 4, APOTHEOSIS. In the intro of this episode, we can see Tricky, who is still alive and rocking a brand new face mask. No, not that one. Then we see Hank, wearing even more bandages and infiltrating another building, where we can guess is where Tricky is hiding out. Which is correct, because after killing all the guards and the henchmen, he is seen straight up vibing in what can only be described as a gamer's normal living space. Then, Hank shoots him. That was easy, wasn't it? Well, it wasn't, because now he has to kill the entire crowd Tricky was playing to. And as icing on top, Tricky doesn't really die that easily, which causes him to get back up to take Hank down. Or he can just turn up the music. That works. So, the action commences. And at this point, I feel like I don't really need to explain if Hank won or not, because we all know the answer. How else would there be 10 more episodes? Now that Hank has Tricky back to a corner, he can finally take him out. Not until Jesus and his hench zombie walk through the door though. Well, blast through the door. Same thing. And revive everyone. Now the real action commences. He kills all the zombies with ease and reaches Jesus, who doesn't even kill Hank. His hench zombie does. And he doesn't even kill him, he just shoots him in the neck. I don't know who to be more disappointed in, to be honest. Hank, in a final ditch effort, kills the hench zombie, while Jesus, in response, shoots Hank multiple times. Then Hank really pulls his final ditch effort and blows himself up, bringing Jesus down with him. What do you think about that, Tricky? Couldn't have said it better myself. Episode 5, Depredation. Depredation? What is this, a spelling bee?
Iridocyclitis.
Anyways, the episode starts with Hank wearing some new clothes and even more bandages, which is to be expected after the stunt he pulled off earlier, and infiltrating another building? Man, these bad guys have no imagination, do they? Staying on track with things that are the same, Jesus and Tricky are both still the antagonists, and are actually powerful threats this time around. The first antagonist Hank encounters is Jesus, wearing probably even more bandages than Hank, and actually doing something incredible, taking the fight outside. And after Hank totally destroys them, gets interrupted by Tricky and his street time back from episode 3. And man, if this was a fighting game, Tricky would be completely broken, because as Hank was about to kill Jesus, he emerges from the ground, kicks Jesus, and straight up abuses Hank, causing him to get tossed out of the trench they are fighting in, and allow 2 random unnamed characters to drop Hank a sword to defend himself. These guys are important, trust me. And Tricky, after killing Jesus by splitting his head in half, goes one-on-one with Hank, as the 2 unnamed characters get squished by a building that just appears. A quick and intense fight occurs, and it consists of Hank getting stabbed, Tricky getting his face cut in half, and much more. Though, if you remember, Tricky doesn't die easily, and goes sicko mode on Hank after he's done way too much to him, literally smashing his body to the ground and claiming victory. With the final line being said, "No one kills Clown, Clown kills you." Episode 5.5, Madness 5.5. Episode 5.5? Yeah, this seems like a good time to mention that there's a side story to Madness, and it involves the 2 characters that we saw at the end of episode 5, Sanford and Deimos. And something you should know about these side episodes is that it takes place at the same time of the episode that came before it. Except, of course, this episode, which takes place after the last episode. Still confused? Well, too late because the episode's starting. The episode begins with the two seen in a tent that is obviously tracking something, Hank and Tricky. Then it cuts to see them greatly injured and in the car they were seen in the last episode, along with them also being inside the building that landed on top of them. So as the only option presents itself, they advance through the building. And you can see by the teamwork or coordination they have that they've known each other for a long time and are experienced fighters, if that wasn't apparent already. As they advance, we also learn that Tricky is here too. He is seen wondering why the other half of Jesus' head isn't working, almost as if he wants something from it. And after seeing what he did to Jesus and Hank, I bet Sanford and Deimos want no part of it. Eventually though, Tricky catches up with the two, and his mere presence alone makes Sanford and Deimos dip, to only get engulfed by another building. Here we see train tracks just appearing along with the train. They dodge it, but the episode ends with a new looking henchman, in the action of shooting the two, before cutting to a black screen. Episode 6, Antipathy. After the last time we saw Hank, it's hard to believe that the series is even still going. But in the intro, we get some explanations. It shows him getting revived, with a gun and a sword lying next to him with a note saying, "Just do what comes naturally, T," who is obviously Tricky. Now Hank's on the hunt, and he's definitely not holding back anymore. Hank enters the building and straight up massacres everyone. He reaches the end of the building that shows a control panel with a note on it reading, "Very good. Now catch me if you can, sucker. T." But before Hank has a chance to think, a train breaks through and Hank grabs hold of the end cart. This is most likely the train from the last episode, and it is controlled by Tricky, who of course seems to be having some great fun with this. Props to him. But Hank's getting closer to the front cart, so Tricky unplugs his cart from the rest, and Hank in response jumps to grab hold of the end of Tricky's cart. Now they're face to face, ready to fight for what might be the last time. But they fall off a cliff. I don't know what to tell you. That was a sign to warn them. It's their fault. After photobombing a picture, Hank and Tricky are seen in very rough states, but they can now finally get down to business and give it their all. A real battle commences, showing how much Hank has improved. But even after all Hank went through, he is still no match for Tricky, who kills him again. But by surprise, gets revived by Tricky, like seen in the beginning of the episode, because he doesn't want to stop. He wants to keep killing Hank forever. But Tricky wants to make this interesting as well, so he puts Hank through another building of henchmen, and Hank, already mad, speedruns through the whole thing and makes it to Tricky, who's eating some hot dogs. But this hot dog came with some extra ketchup, because Hank grabs Tricky with an axe and mows him down with an AR as he falls down the trench. But Tricky is not done. Far from it. He transforms to a white version of himself, bigger and badder as if he wasn't that already. And all we can do now is hope Tricky still has mercy for Hank, because he's going to need it. Episode 6.5, Madness 6.5. In this episode, we follow Sanford and Deimos, who are still where we last saw them, the train tracks. This allows us to get a better look at the new guard and how he shot Sanford! Oh, never mind, he's fine. The two begin looking for a way out, and we once again see the amazing display of teamwork and how they... Wait a second, is that Jesus? Yeah, he's back. I guess he didn't die back in episode 5. But there is something important to mention. Jesus is being watched, and it's by another character we meet in this episode, the Auditor, an all-black character with his eyes being the only feature that stands out, and also being the leader of the AAHW, or Agency Against Hank Rippleton, an organization whose only goal is to, well, kill Hank. Yeah, he is seen watching Jesus, who finds the other half of his head, allowing him to put his halo back on, completing his look. Then he walks away, leaving only a note for the Auditor to see reading, "I quit, J." The Auditor, playing it safe, just upgrades the henchmen, changing their appearances, and leaving it at that. Anyways, this is still a Sanford and Deimos episode, right? Yeah, you tend to forget that here. We see them killing the upgraded guards, wondering if that upgrade was really worth it, to then eventually making it to the lounge, which houses the Rift. In here we can see Sanford and Deimos in their true form. Don't worry though, they're not going Super Saiyan or anything, they're just getting new clothes. Now I can finally tell them apart. Like, seriously, I wasn't the only one thinking that, right? Wait a second, the bad guys, they're doing bad stuff. Get out of there, guys. They do make it out and eventually get to the roof, which luckily has a helicopter ready to go. So as they shoot up a few more henchmen, they leave, and hopefully can make it to Hank before it's too late. Episode 7, Consternation. Hank is in his worst state yet. Heck, when we first see him, his face is in half. He is still fighting though, but with Tricky in his new state, it's hard to really do anything. After a while, Hank can't fight anymore. He's dead for like the 5th time. Tricky, annoyed by this, revives him, wanting a fight. He's new now. He probably won't last though, as Tricky only did this to torture him more. And while he's at it, he might as well have some fun with it, as he always does. He creates some rooms to chase Hank through, and what would those rooms be without the trademark henchman? During this chase, we learn about the portable improbability drive. This is the device that had powered Tricky and his powers with improbability for so long, and since he got hurt, it's been damaged. So as this chase goes on, let's keep that in mind, shall we? We also meet a new henchman, and he's a little bigger than the others, along with more powerful. This mag agent. Mag agents are basically just cooler henchmen. It's called Torture, and it's just another thing that Hank has to worry about now. Hank gets thrown by him and lands on another building that he enters, and ends up eventually killing Torture in, with a chainsaw nonetheless. Oh yeah, Tricky, we forgot about you. He grows down to Hank's size for an equal fight, which also begs the question why he didn't do that sooner, and throws Hank next to the portable improbability drive. How convenient. But before Hank gets a word in, he dies. By Jesus? Yeah, Jesus is here, and I guess before quitting he wanted to take Hank with him. So he does. But what about Tricky? That was his kill. Jesus, knowing exactly what to do, breaks the portable improbability drive, rendering Tricky useless, and more importantly vulnerable, which gives Jesus a perfect chance to... yeah, that. With Hank and Tricky dead, Jesus has claimed a victory, although there is still one score waiting to be settled. In the distance, the Auditor with some more mag agents can be seen monitoring everything. Tricky, the portable improbability drive, Torture, and with everyone dead and Jesus ready for a duel, he decides to give Jesus what he wants, a fight. Episode 7.5, Madness 7.5. So that was a lot to unpack, wasn't it? And we still have 4 episodes left. So to unwind, let's have a calm episode with the duo Sanford and Deimos. They are seen... You know what? I hate saying infiltrating another building. I say it all the time because the AAHW have no imagination. So from now on, I'm gonna say ayabbing. Okay? Infiltrating another building. Ayabbing. Okay? Okay. So the ayabbing, and during it, we actually get to learn a lot more about how the henchmen are made. There's factories, upgrading systems, and even tiers. For bad guys, these guys are pretty serious. Which I mean, they should be, right? If they want to succeed. Sanford and Deimos have no problem taking them on though, and at the end, they actually destroy one of the upgrading machines present, just to be mean like that. Deimos eventually gets a message on this device saying that Hank has been terminated, which we already know. And it also means it's time to go get him. Episode 8, Inundation. Hank is dead, Sanford and Deimos are on the way, so who do we follow? Well, Jesus of course. After killing 2 of his biggest roadblocks, he's out for the Auditor, and while he's at it, he might as well sabotage his plans. He destroys the chamber that can be seen preparing more henchmen, and he just straight up kills all the henchmen down there as well. The Auditor, learning about this, decides to try and slow him down. On his console, he installs a virus in him to infect him. This could be seen throughout the episode slowly killing him, making time of the essence. The Auditor, not wanting Jesus to do any more than he already has, gets ready to fight him, himself, preparing himself with a machine gun before exiting the room. Jesus, on the other hand, is moving as fast as he can, and after killing one of the Auditor's mag agents, finally gets outside. The Auditor was waiting though, and with his machine gun tries to shoot Jesus from across the field. Jesus doesn't have time for this though, and just flies to the Auditor's building, and after killing another mag agent, reaches the Auditor himself. This is where we can finally see the Auditor in action, using his teleportation powers to overpower Jesus and get a couple hits in before leaving. Now, with an opportunity, Jesus gets to the Auditor's console to shut everything down, but the Auditor reaches him. They have another duel which ends in a boom. This explosion injures Jesus and the Auditor's console. This is horrible for him because as seen on the console, a device called Improbability Management was blown to shreds, which is causing this world to return to normal. I should probably explain some important stuff now, should I? From context clues, it's pretty obvious the world, if you can even call it that, is running on improbability. It powers Tricky, the world they live in, and probably even the Auditor and his henchmen. And now without it being managed, the world is crumbling. It's made even more apparent with the big explosion that follows, engulfing the building along with Jesus. So it's safe to say that things are pretty bad. Episode 9, Aggregation. This episode starts off with the main duo, Sanford and Deimos, as they are seen traveling to Hank, or what's left of him. It's pretty apparent though that the AAHW doesn't want them there. They try intercepting them but fail, and the two then witness the normality blast from the last episode. The two reach Hank's dead body along with Tricky's, then pick up Hank, ready to bring him back. In the distance we can see the Auditor, who has survived the blast, unlike Jesus, but there's something interesting that came out of his death. His halo. The Auditor, intrigued by his halo, wears it, and we learn that it gives the wearer power, which explains why it made Jesus so powerful, and more importantly why Tricky wanted it so badly. So yeah, probably not a good thing that he has it, is it? He then makes it to another building where he gives the henchmen guarding the building some kind of power thanks to the halo, giving them a more faded look. They then walk off to do something that the Auditor probably ordered them to do through the halo. And inside the building, the Auditor has a mag agent to revive, and with the halo, it would only be a matter of seconds. Back with the duo still holding Hank, start ayabbing, eventually making their way to a place called Agent Magnification, which can only mean one thing. Unfortunately though, they were followed by the guards with the new powers. You know, the ones given by the halo, making them much harder to defeat. So the duo split up. Deimos gets ready to revive Hank, and Sanford gets ready to stall for Deimos. Sanford does a good job before the guards split up as well, and one of them, catching Deimos by surprise, shoots him. Yeah, I know, a bittersweet ending for such a fan-favorite character, but he did good, because as the soldier leaves, Hank begins to emerge from the capsule, which what seems to have given him a new look. Cutting back to Sanford, still keeping the guards occupied, realizes they're leaving. I didn't know they were that scared, but it's actually because someone important here is here to say hello. That's right, the Auditor and the mag agent are here to end this, and to do this they need to take care of something. More specifically, someone. But that someone is much more powerful now. Say hello to Mag Hank. Hank now is much bigger and is packing with a brand new lobster arm, or whatever animal that's supposed to be. Is that an animal? Anyways, we see how much more powerful he is by the way he destroys the mag agent and the guards after throwing the Auditor to the side. The Auditor returns after being thrown like a baseball and is now fighting Sanford, who has just arrived. Before the episode ends, the Auditor is seen sucking up all the dead bodies from the fight, and growing bigger, along with more powerful. This is most likely a new power given by the Halo, and it's probably gonna cause some issues. Episode 10, Abrogation. Okay, no more stops. We are heading straight into the action. It starts off exactly where we last saw our heroes, which means it's fight time. Hank tries to throw in some punches, but the Auditor fires back, and here we see some of his new powers. For example, here we see a whip and fire. Sanford tries using guns, but bullets pass through him, almost as if he's made of smoke. Hank, covering for Sanford, gets a few more punches in while Sanford is able to disarm the Auditor. But when the Auditor can turn into a little dragon there's very little guns can do in this situation. Fortunately for Sanford, Hank manages to grab the halo and get a feel for the powers it can provide. Electricity begins to surge through him, showing us what the halo can do for him. It's short-lived though, because the auditor manages to retrieve it from him. Weirdly enough though, the electricity seems to have some after effects for Hank, causing it to slow the process of the battle. Meanwhile, Sanford has been busy with the henchmen, which can be killed by guns, making it an easy job for him. The auditor is annoyed though. He wants to win, and right now, he needs some better odds. He breaks a piece of platform and stretches it high up with a little hatch at the bottom for Hank and Sanford to enter in. Hank is the first to go. Unfortunately though, if you wanted something interesting, you'll be wrongly mistaken, because the only thing down here is a couple of rooms to start ayabbing through, which is what happens. The auditor on top of the pillar is seen being damaged by the little bits of electricity still present after Hank had the halo. This tells us that the power of the halo can damage and thus more kill the auditor if in Hank's hand, but he'll need to grab it first. Hank and Sanford are getting closer to the auditor, and throughout the excursion have to fight more infected henchmen like the ones seen in the last episode. And like in the last episode, they are much stronger than their counterparts. They also encounter another mag agent, and it gives Hank and Sanford a hard time, though he does let us witness the little amount of energy Hank still has from the halo, and because of his power is easily able to kill the mag agent now. Going back to the auditor, he is seen in more distress as the electricity is still present and damaging him. As a compromise, he sucks in some of the henchmen nearby, which heal him. Yeah, that's not good, is it? And even worse, he states he needs more. Going back to Hank and Sanford, man, I'm getting dizzy. They are seen on an elevator which brings them to the top, where they encounter another mag agent and the auditor. This might be their last encounter, and the auditor sure wants to make it. But Hank isn't going down without a fight. He uses the electricity power to punch and actually inflict damage on the auditor. Unfortunately, the auditor knows how to deal with that now, and just sucks in more bodies to make him stronger. Hank and Sanford try to fight him off, but with each body he sucks in, the more powerful he gets, and he's already in a strong state. Though, there is one body, one that might put an end to the auditor's reign. Tricky is seen being sucked up by the auditor's powers and immediately begins to overpower him as he enters his body. This is then followed up with an explosion that causes the whole platform to be covered in dust, leaving only Hank, Sanford, and whatever has come of the auditor to fight it out. Episode 11, Expurgation. The episode starts with Hank and Sanford rushing down a ladder that they must have used to escape before the auditor got occupied. Looking back at where the auditor last stood, we can see black liquid in flames as he emerges. Or I should say, they emerge. Little bold skull things have risen from the liquid and are the minions working for the atrocity up there. The two take them out, but I'm guessing that's not the last we'll see of them. Then, a familiar face. Tricky. Well, not really that familiar. Doesn't even look like him. Tricky states to Hank and Sanford that you cannot kill Clown. Which, I mean, is he wrong at this point? It doesn't matter though, because an even more unrecognizable face appears, and he definitely isn't here for mercy. And even worse, he's wearing the halo. He summons his minions to take care of Sanford as he deals with Hank. Although, he doesn't really need to deal with him because he shoves them to an underground world. You know, as you do. This will be the setting from now on. We cut to Sanford, who was pushed here thanks to the minions. Then we see Tricky, who can be identified amongst his minions with the halo, if that wasn't apparent, then sends henchmen to Sanford, not before Hank emerges as well and kills all the henchmen. Tricky, escaping to the ground, summons walls and walkways to tell them to get out or they'll die. And I'd listen to him because with all the spikes coming out of the ground, that should be clear enough. They fade out as they jump off the platform, both being sent to a different area. Hank is transported with the auditor, who just straight up impales him with the spikes and brings him down to the ground. Like, literally. Sanford, on the other hand, was summoned to a room with henchmen, and is also seen to be infected with the black liquid, which hurts him, making him less efficient. In this room, he encounters Tricky, who could have guessed, doesn't die from gunshots, and just flips the room upside down, causing Sanford to fall and fight more minions outside. Tricky, who trademarkingly only wants to have fun, drops some weapons for Sanford and drops off some minions as well. After fighting them and getting cornered by Tricky, we can see some spikes appear behind him that summon the one and only Hank, who is looking all well and new. This has me guessing that the spikes represent the Auditor, and that he might have been the one telling the two to leave, and might have healed Hank as well, although he might have just done that because he wants Tricky dead. Hank brings Tricky to the ground, this time not literally, and uses his lightning powers from the last episode to damage him quite a bit, causing Tricky to drop the halo. But we learn that he can just pick another henchman to wear it, making all that fighting in the grand scheme of things meaningless. The new, or same Tricky then Falcon punches Hank to the platform Sanford was last seen on, and then flips it over with a lever. More fighting then commences, Hank literally carrying Sanford through it with his new look and power. This continues until we see a Tricky looking mag agent. It dies, and they reach the end of the hellhole with a bright streak symbolizing the end. Tricky pulls out all his forces, stepping in himself even, but Hank with his lobster arm punched the streak, and then we see the very unfamiliar face that brought the two here exploding, and the Auditor emerging from it. This makes sense as he was the one who got possessed and took its form. And with the halo right in front of him, he can finally continue his plan, whoever that is. And with Tricky dead, the only word said by the Auditor is, finally. Yep, that's it. And I swear, after watching this on my first run, I thought that the creator actually died, because there's no way you can end a show so popular on that big of a cliffhanger. There's a good explanation though. If you look at the post dates, you can see the gap between episode 10 and 11 is pretty large. Like 8 years large. Yeah, I would expect it to be a while until we see any more episodes, but that one was enough to get me thinking about the series so much I made this video. So I guess that's a good thing. And if you're one of those people who are still craving some Madness combat after learning the story, I have the things for you. Along with the series are also 2 mini-series. Deimos Adventure, which follows Deimos after he died, perfect for people who feel like his death was undeserved, and Madness Combat Incidents, which is a bunch more lore and action that you can just dive into. Let me know if you guys want to see video on these, because I'd be really excited to make it on those. But if you're really still craving something, there are games. Yes, I said games. The most popular ones are Madness Interactive, where the name is pretty self-explanatory, taking place during episode 2, Madness Accelerant, where Tricky is trying to kill you, if you weren't bored of that, as you try to escape him and kill him, and by far the most popular, Madness Project Nexus, where you can play as all your favorite characters and, well, kill people. I mean, that seems pretty accurate to me. And recently, Crinkles and a few other amazing people have created a sequel/remake that can be found on Steam right now, Madness Project Nexus 2. And it looks amazing. That all being said, I really appreciate you stepping by and watching this video to its end. It took a lot of effort, and I know it's weird for someone's first ever video on the platform. That being said, that's all for me. See you guys soon.